Can I plug an electric water heater in an outlet?
Hi, I'm Mike and I have 20 plus years of experience as a plumber. I'll be glad to assist you today. Is it a mobile home water heater or regular water heater? What outlet do you want to plug it into?
A regular water heater. I want to plug it into a regular outlet instead of running a wire under the house to the breaker box.
Alright, this would never work since the outlet is far less voltage than the water heater requires. Also, technically by code the water heater requires a hard wire connection. If the breaker was the right size on the dryer plug it would work, but the short answer is that you will need to run the correct size wire and connect it per manufacturer directions for a proper connection.
How would I know if the breaker box is large enough to add another breaker? Also, what would be the best way to run a new wire to the breaker box? There is currently a gas water heater, but I'm putting in an electric water heater.
You would have to add up all of the amps of your panel box and calculate that against the max load of the panel. You will likely need to add a sub-panel to add the wire for the water heater.
How would I go about putting in a sub-panel?
This is something that I would recommend some professional help. It really is not a DIY type project. You would need to get a permit and have it inspected. That of course is only if you find that the sub-panel is required after confirming that your current panel does not allow the correct amperage to add the water heater.
Here are pictures of the panel box.
I am going to open this question to other experts. My name is Emma, licensed plumber from Eel. I would recommend hiring a qualified electrician to add a circuit for your new heater. Typically this requires a 30 amp double throw 230 volt breaker with a minimum of a number 10 wire for distances less than 20 feet. Your Cutler H-Hammer breaker box does look like it has the space for it to be added. But again, an electrician is your best bet for that part. Then you can cap the gas and flue connections, which can be answered with more picks. Connect to the water pipes and the water heater will have 2 wires and a ground for the wiring part. No, they cannot be plugged into a simple wall outlet. They require twice the voltage and amperage. What is your mechanical ability?
I'm not an electrician, but I have taken electrical classes. I know how to install breakers and wiring. I have installed and hooked up a water heater before. I just wanted to know how I would know if the current breaker box is capable of handling the new breaker.
Is there actual room on the bus bar behind the knockouts for an additional breaker, and is the main feed wire big enough for all the amps you would be using at once? Is this the main panel in the house or is this a sub-feed?
There is room.
Okay, there is room for an additional breaker. Now you need to know if the wire coming to the panel is big enough to handle the amp draw from all of your electric appliances and lighting. If not, you are wasting your time and the water heater will not work, and worse, it could start an electrical fire. For a novice, you must be able to shut power off to the main panel with a disconnect or main breaker feeding it. A simple service call from a qualified electrician can sum all this up in a matter of 30 minutes or so. You could still do the work yourself. Safety first is the best policy, not worth putting your place or life at risk. Hope this helps.
50 dp, 60 dp, 30 dp, 15 SPX 230 SP, 20 SPS. It says 125 amps max. I don't need a plumber, I need an electrician.
Hello and welcome to Just Answer. My name is, I will be happy to assist you with your electrical question. 1. Electric hot water heaters are always hardwired with a dedicated circuit and never cord and plug connected. It is a violation of the National Electrical Code to cord and plug connect an electric hot water heater per Article 400.7a. 8. If you have any additional questions, just let me know and I'll be glad to answer them for you. Otherwise, don't forget to rate me before you log off. Thanks. Kevin.
From the pictures that I have posted, can you tell me if I would be able to add a 60 amp double pole breaker for a water heater? What is the amount of amps each gauge of wire can carry? I know how to perform the work, but I'm not sure how to figure out if the load is going to be too much.
1. How many amps is your main service? 2. Electric tank hot waters heaters are typically 30 amps and not 60 amps unless you have a large tank model or a tankless model. 3. Do you have a clamp on amp probe meter to measure the existing service amps when the house is under full load?
Right now this is what I have: 50 dp, 60 dp, 30 dp, 15 SPX, 230 SP, 20 SPX3. How would I figure the total amps? Do I just add up the circuit breakers?
1. Those are branch circuit breakers. No, they are not additive. I need to know how many amps the main service disconnect or the main breaker is rated for.
This is an older house. It doesn't have a main breaker to shut off everything. Would I have to get this info from the electric company?
1. All homes will either have a main disconnect circuit breaker or a main fuse disconnect switch to kill power to the home. The main disconnect will either reside inside the main electrical panel or it could reside on the exterior of the home as a separate disconnect, or the meter socket may contain a disconnect breaker.
If the meter socket contains it, would I have to contact the electric company to find out, or is that something that I would have access to?
1. If the meter socket enclosure contains a main disconnect breaker, you would have access to it. 2. What is the 60 amp double pole breaker for? Looks like it might be the main. Kill power to the 60 amp breaker. Does that kill power to the entire home?
I'm not sure.
1. Kill power to the 60 amp breaker. Does it kill power to the entire home?
It's at my mom's house. I'm not there right now.
Okay, no problem, just reply back to me when you have an opportunity and we can take it from there. Thanks. Kevin.
Okay.
Very good.
If it does is that the total load that it can take? I think that 60 amp double pole breaker goes to the furnace.
1. Is the furnace electric or gas?
Gas.
1. Won't be a 60 amp breaker for a gas furnace. Will either be a 15 or 20 amp single pole breaker.
It's a furnace and AC, I didn't know if that mattered.
1. The gas furnace will reside on either a 15 or a 20 amp single pole breaker. A central AC unit will typically reside on a separate 30 or 40 or 50 amp double pole breaker. 1. Is the home a single family or a mobile home? 2. What is the approximate age of the home? 3. Homes built prior to the mid-1960s were often a 60 amp main service. After 1965 or so, new homes were typically a 100 amp service.
This is a single-family home. It is a Jim Walter home. It was built in 1973. It has had a few additions since then.
Okay, since the home was built in 73, it should be a 100 amp service.
How can I tell for sure?
1. Either by the size of a main breaker or a main fuse disconnect or by the wire size of the service entrance conductors that terminate to the panel. A 100 amp service requires either 4 AWG copper or 2 AWG aluminum conductors.
I know it has aluminum wire. What size would the main breaker be if it is 100 amp?
1. If a 100 amp service, the main breaker will also be labeled as 100 amps.
What if the 60 amp breaker is the main breaker?
That is always a possibility. If so, then the panel is only rated for 60 amps. Somewhat doubtful, since most homes built after the mid-1960s were usually a 100 amp service. But anything is possible.
Do you know what else in the house could call for a 60 amp double pole breaker?
1. Either an electric furnace or an electric range or an air compressor or welder, or possibly the 60 amp breaker could be used as a sub-panel feeder circuit to feed a downstream panel.
There is an electric range.
Most electric ranges are either 40 or 50 amps.
If it is 100 amp, do I add up all of the breakers to get the total amps that's being used? Can you tell by the pictures the size of the wire?
1. No, you need a clamp-on amp probe meter and place it around each of the 2 hot phases on the main lugs of the panel. The house needs to be under full load as much as possible. That means, turn on every light, range, AC, TV, etc. to get the home under a full load. Once you know the main amp service rating, subtract the amp probe measurement from the service rating, and that is how many amps are remaining. If installing an electric hot water heater, most require 30 amps. If the main service is too small, the main breaker or main fuse can easily overload and trip. 2. Somewhere there must be a main disconnect breaker or a main fuse. If not, then the original electrical installation is a code violation. All single-family homes require a main means of disconnect. 3. Look at the wire insulation, it will be labeled with the AWG size.
It's 100 amp.
Okay, thanks for confirming.
I know you can't tell me anything definite, but 2 houses that are 100 amp should be able to carry the same load, shouldn't it?
Maybe or maybe not. 1. Electrical service amperage is calculated based on the habitable square footage plus all of the other loads such as electric range or oven, electric dryer, electric hot water heater, dishwasher, garbage disposal, electric or gas heat, central AC, garage tools such as air compressors or welders. As you can see, it really depends upon the high wattage loads that may be in a home. Not all homes have the above electrical appliances, or they may only have a few. The wattage of the loads is what drives up the service amperage requirement in any home and/or building.
Do you have a diagram that can show me exactly where to place the clamps to test it?
See picture shown below.
Is this done one at a time?
Yes, one at a time with the home under full load as much as possible. Each hot phase will most likely vary a bit in amperage. Seldom are both hot phases equal, so no worries on that.
If all of the amps were available, would each hot phase be 100 or will they each be 50, and how much available amps would I need for a water 30 to 40 gallon water heater and an electric dryer?
1. Each hot phase equals 100 amps. 2. Electric hot water heaters, 50 gallon stand-up type, and electric dryers require 30 amps for each appliance. A smaller hot water heater will most likely be 20 amps.
Okay, thanks, may not be able to handle both.
Yes, that is always a possibility. If numerous electric appliances in the home, the service and panel may need to be upgraded to a 200 amp service. This is somewhat common on homes that contain electric appliances. Get the home under full load, turn on all appliances, microwave, dryer, washer, lights, TVs, etc., and measure each hot phase. Subtract each reading from 100 amps and that will be the remaining /available amps for future use. Take the lowest amp measurement subtracted from 100 to play it safe. Thank you for the positive service rating. Much appreciated. If you have any other questions, just let me know. Take care and have a great evening. Thanks again. Kevin.
The two hot phase wires have too much insulation on them to get a good connection. Should I just clean more insulation off?
Yes, you need to have bare copper for a proper termination. Strip off approx 1 inch of insulation and then cut the copper wires shorter if needed.
If you have a home improvement or appliance question and want to chat with an expert now, visit JustAnswer.com/YTHI.